Right, so, like, here's a very salient question that no one really talks about. Who has enough money to be able to lend a country money? And I know people will say the IMF, IBRD, World Bank. Yeah? Cool. Let's delve a little bit deeper. How does the IMF, IBRD, World Bank make its money? They don't produce anything. They don't make anything. So how do they make money? They essentially loan money out at rates that countries can't pay. And if you can't pay, they take your stuff. They're basically like glorified bailiffs, really. Like, if you don't pay, we'll take it. We'll take your harbour, we'll take your motorways, we'll take your mobile phone operators, we'll take your spectrum, we'll take your TV broadcasters, we'll take your harbour, we'll take your airlines. That's how the IMF operates. If you don't know, please go read Confessions of a Economic Hitman and then come back. But essentially that's how it works. But let's go back to even the beginning. So where did the IMF get enough money to be able to start loaning out money to countries? And secondly, if the IMF is loaning out money to countries, isn't that unethical? Because why should a country borrow money from a private bank or private institution without consulting its people? And if the people have not been consulted, surely if then a country decides not to pay, the IMF has no leg to stand on, because the discussion was not had with everyone. If you have a discussion with a president or a leader, bearing in mind that Western governments go around advocating democracy, right? So if we're talking about democracy, and we all know that the structure of democracy is that you have an elected leader who serves as president for a period of time, then he goes and another person comes in. So if a person is only there for, say, 4 years, right? How can he then make a decision that affects the country for 100 years? That's illegal. That's completely illegal and unethical. It shouldn't happen. And every country that has a loan from the IMF that they can't pay literally needs to tell them to fuck off and not pay anything. And another question, who's actually behind the RBRD, IMF and World Bank? Who's actually bankrolling them? Who are the, where are their, board of governors, board of directors, trustees? Who are they? What are their backgrounds? Where are their accounts? Where can we actually look? Because clearly they're loaning money to countries, so it should be available for citizens of that country to be able to go and look and ascertain, hey, who's actually taking money from, who's paying for, where's this money come from? You know, we don't want it to be drug money or trafficking money or human trafficking money or whatever it is. So surely there should be some check, there should be a check or balance for that. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. But then here's another question. If the IMF, RBRD, World Bank, and all these institutions, right, loan you money and then you don't pay, and then they say, hey, we're going to come and take your telecoms, or we're going to come and take your spectrum, we're going to come and take your airlines, we're going to come and take your lucrative shipping licenses, whatever it is, fishing licenses or whatever it is, right? Because they do this. Look into it. And say the government says no. Who is the muscle behind the IMF or the World Bank or the IBRD? Who's the muscle? Who's the enforcer? Because if it's the United States or Western governments or NATO, that's your answer for who the World Bank and IMF or IBRD is. It's those very same governments in a different suit. But the thing is, I don't get too bogged down about these governments and stuff like this, because as I've discussed before, it's all a game. It's theater, right? So I make these points because I want people, because it's all designed to keep people asleep anyway, because people don't really, think too deep on these sorts of things. But I need people to start thinking deep on these topics, because once you start delving deep to any reasonable degree, you start to recognize that it's all a sham and it's a scam being played on you and your mind, because it shouldn't really happen. And in any world that was real, when I say real, I use that term very loosely to describe a world that, you see, the world that people believe exists, if that world was actually the world in existence, these things shouldn't happen. That's a fact. Because how could it? How could it possibly happen? It's like loan sharking, basically. Loan sharking, how? And how are people just sitting back and letting it happen and no one's reacting? That's totally crazy. But yeah. So that's a very interesting one that I just started to think about, because I was thinking about the World Bank and IMF and stuff, and I thought, you know what, this is actually a scam. Like, how can you, like, essentially you had the leader of the country go and borrow money, right, from an organization without consulting its people, and then now he says, hey, we can't pay it back, so we need to sell some stuff. What? and nobody reacts. What? That's crazy. Like, literally, that's crazy. I'm surprised you can't see how crazy that actually is as a notion. It's totally fucking insane. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, I'm about to jump in a sauna for a bit. So yeah, the debt ceiling is a myth.